Hello everyone, myself Sindhu, lecturer in zoology, BGS First Grade College, Kuvempu, Mysore. In this class, I am going to discuss about the continuation part of Unit 1, that is gametogenesis. Let's discuss about the types of eggs. So here, this types of eggs is based on the classification of two criterias, in which the first one is, this classification is based on the amount of yolk which is present in the eggs. Okay. So one thing is about the amount of yolk. Okay, and the second one is on the basis of distribution of yolk. Distribution of yolk. Okay. So here this X types is based on the classification of amount of yolk, how much amount is present, and the second one is on the basis of the distribution of yolk. Okay. So under this the amount of yolk, we have three types. Okay, in which the first one is microlecithal eggs. Okay, microlecithal means, as a name says, micro means less, very less. If the very less amount of yolk is present, then it is called as microlecithal eggs. Okay, example is human egg. Example for microlecithal eggs is human egg. As the name says, very little amount of or very less amount of yolk is present. If the very less amount of yolk is present, then it is called as the microlecithal eggs. Example is human egg. Okay, and the second one under the amount of yolk is mesolecithal eggs. Okay, which means moderate amount of yolk is present, then it is called as mesolecithal egg. If the moderate amount of yolk is present, then it is called as the mesolecithal eggs. And example for this mesolecithal eggs are the frog eggs. Okay. Then the last one is macrolecithal, or we can also call it as a polylecithal eggs. Here macro means the egg, it contains a sufficient amount of yolk. Okay. If the egg contains a sufficient amount of yolk, then it is called as macrolecithal or polylecithal eggs. Example for this particular type of egg is birds' eggs and reptiles' eggs. Okay. So this is about the amount of yolk, based on the amount of yolk. Here we have three types, in which the first one is microlecithal, mesolecithal and macrolecithal. As the name says, micro means very less amount of yolk, and meso, moderate amount of yolk is present, and macro, the sufficient amount of yolk is present. Then it is called as a macro or polylecithal eggs. And coming to the distribution of yolk. Okay, the second one on the basis of the distribution of yolk. Here we have three types. Again we have three types under the distribution, in which the first one is homolecithal or isolecithal eggs. Okay. So in case of this, what happens is the yolk is evenly distributed. Okay, yolk is evenly distributed all over the egg. Then it is called as homolecithal or isolecithal eggs. Example is human eggs. Okay. And the second one is telolecithal. Here what happens is the yolk is present or settled only at one place. Okay. Yolk content present towards one side. Then it is called as telolecithal eggs. So example for this is the hen's egg. Okay. So consider this is an egg. Here what happens is the yolk is present at or towards one side. Okay, this is yolk. So in case of insect, yolk is present at the one side, only one side, then it is called as the telolicital egg. Okay, so this is the hens egg. Then the last one is centrolicital egg. As the name says, the yolk is present at the center. Yolk is present at the center, then it is called as the centrolicital egg. For this we can give an example of insect egg. So let me draw the diagram over here. So consider this is an insect egg. Here what happens is the yolk content is present exactly at the center. Okay, in case of insect egg. So this type of eggs are called as the centrolicital eggs. Okay, so this is about the this is based on the distribution of the yolk. One is amount of yolk, based on the amount of yolk, and another one is on the basis of the distribution of yolk. So besides this, we also have another type of egg, that is cleidoic egg. This is also called as self-sufficient eggs. Okay, self-sufficient eggs. Here what happens is egg has enough yolk content. The egg has enough yolk content to supply complete nourishment for the embryonic development. Okay, then that type of such eggs are called as cleidoic eggs. Understood? So cleidoic eggs are nothing but the self-sufficient eggs. In case of this, egg has enough amount of yolk content and it supply complete nourishment for the embryonic development or complete embryonic development. So this is about the types of eggs. So let's discuss about the cleavage. Here I am going to discuss about the types of cleavage and the planes of cleavage. So cleavage is a process of repeated and rapid mitotic division of a fertilized egg. Okay, repeated and rapid mitotic division. Okay, repeated and rapid mitotic division of a fertilized egg. Which means the diploid one, that is 2n in number. Okay, so cleavage is a process of repeated and rapid mitotic division of a fertilized egg. Okay, you have to mention this, fertilized egg, and it is a diploid. As I told you before, fertilized means diploid, 2n in number, and it produces or it forms a mass of cells, called morula. Okay, this process leads to the formation of a mass of cells, and this mass of cell is called as morula. Okay, and the single cell or each cell is called as blastomere. Each cell is called as a blastomeres, and the mass of cells are called as a morula. Okay, so under this cleavage we have majorly two types. Okay, coming to the types of cleavage, we have two types, in which the first one is holoblastic cleavage. Okay, holoblastic cleavage. Holoblastic cleavage is also called as a total cleavage, or we can also call it as a complete cleavage. Okay, coming to the types of the cleavage, we have majorly two types, in which the first one is holoblastic cleavage or the total cleavage, or we can also call it as a complete cleavage. As the name says, holoblastic cleavage means here what happens is the cleavage furrows cuts the entire egg. Okay, cleavage furrows cuts the entire egg. That is what the holoblastic or the total, complete, whole egg. Okay, the cleavage furrows cuts the whole egg. That is what the holoblastic cleavage. So under this holoblastic cleavage, we have two types. We have two types, in which the first one is the equal holoblastic cleavage and the unequal holoblastic cleavage. Okay, equal holoblastic cleavage and the unequal holoblastic cleavage. So equal holoblastic means, as the name says, here the cleavage results in the formation of blastomere of approximately equal sized. Here there is a formation of the blastomeres. Blastomeres formation will be there, and this particular blastomeres are approximately equal sized. Okay, we can see the equal sized blastomeres in case of equal holoblastic cleavage. Example is Amphioxus and marsupials. Okay, example is Amphioxus and marsupials. Coming to the second one under the holoblastic cleavage, second type, here the other one is unequal holoblastic cleavage. One is equal and another one is unequal holoblastic cleavage. Here what happens is blastomeres forms which are unequal sized. Okay, unequal sized blastomeres are produced. Okay, which includes two types of blastomeres. Okay, one is many smaller cells, smaller blastomeres are called micromeres. Okay, along with that the few larger macromeres. So in case of unequal holoblastic cleavage, we can see two types of blastomeres formed because of the unequal division. Okay, unequal sized blastomeres are produced, which includes many smaller blastomeres are called micromeres and the larger blastomeres called the macromeres. Example is the frog egg. You can give an example of frog eggs for this unequal holoblastic cleavage. And the second type is meroblastic cleavage. Holoblastic cleavage and the meroblastic cleavage. So here meroblastic cleavage means cleavage furrows do not cut the yolky part. Okay, here what happens is cleavage furrows, they do not cut the yolky part. They do not cut the yolky part of an egg. It cuts only the cytoplasmic part, active cytoplasmic part. Okay, that is what the meroblastic cleavage. Again, in this also, in meroblastic cleavage also, we have two types, in which the first one is, two types are there, two types. One is discoidal meroblastic cleavage, and the another one is superficial meroblastic cleavage. Okay, these are the two types which comes under the meroblastic cleavage. Then, so what is this discoidal meroblastic cleavage? Here, as I told you, what happens is the cleavage occurs, okay, and this cleavage remains restricted to the disc-shaped active cytoplasm of the animal pole. Okay, consider this is an egg. This anterior end is called as the animal pole. Anterior end or the top end is called as the animal pole, and this one is the posterior end called as vegetal pole, isn't it? So here what happens is cleavage remains restricted to the disc-shaped active cytoplasm of the animal pole. Consider here we have the yolky part, yolk part. Okay. This particular part is the cytoplasmic region, active cytoplasm is present here. So, what happens is, here the cleavage furrows arises, okay, cleavage takes place only at the cytoplasmic region, that will not extend it to the yolky part, okay. That is what the discoidal neuroblastic cleavage, okay. So, here cleavage remains restricted to the disc shaped, this is what the disc shaped active cytoplasm of the egg. Example for this is the reptile's egg and the bony fishes. Okay. We can see this type of cleavage, the discoidal neuroblastic cleavage in case of some reptiles and some bony fishes. And the next one is superficial meroblastic cleavage. Superficial meroblastic cleavage means here the cleavage remains restricted to the peripheral cytoplasm of the egg. Okay, now here consider this is an insect egg. This will be the yolky part. We know that insect eggs are the centrolacetal eggs, insect egg, yolk is present at the center. Here this remaining part are the active cytoplasmic region, okay. Here the cleavage occurs, cleavage furrows arises here, okay. This is what the superficial means a peripheral, we can say. Cleavage remains restricted to the peripheral cytoplasm of the egg. This is the active cytoplasmic region. Example is insects, as I told you before, the centrolacetal eggs, insect egg, okay. Then besides these two, holoblastic cleavage and the meroblastic cleavage, we also have the radial cleavage, okay. We also have the radial cleavage. Here what happens is cleavage results in the formation of blastomeres. Cleavage results in the formation of blastomeres which are arranged in such a way that they are radially symmetric, okay. They are arranged in such a way that they are radially symmetric, which means consider this is an egg. Here we have the blastomeres, okay. Blastomeres are present inside this. So, here what happens is it undergo a radially symmetric cleavage. So, if you cut in any direction, you will get the two equal amount of eggs, okay, or the cells, blastomeres. Example for this particular radial cleavage is the echinoderms. Okay, this is about the types of cleavage. So let's discuss about the planes of cleavage. So here we have 4 types in which the first one is meridional plane, okay, and the second one is vertical plane, third one is equatorial plane and the latitudinal or horizontal plane. These are the 4 important planes which comes under the planes of cleavage. Here what happens is different cleavage furrows divides from or in a different manner, different planes, divides the egg in a different planes, okay. So let's start with the first one, that is meridional plane. Here when cleavage furrows passes through the center of the animal and vegetal pole, okay, and bisects both poles of the egg. So let me draw the diagram over here. Consider this is an egg. The upper part, top part will be the animal pole. This will be the vegetal pole, okay, animal pole and the vegetal pole. Here what happens is in case of meridional plane, the cleavage furrow passes through the center. Cleavage furrow passes through the center of the animal pole and the vegetal pole. Okay? It bisects both poles of the egg. An example for this is first and second cleavage furrows of frog, chick and Amphioxus. Okay? This is about the meridional pole or the plane, meridional plane. Here what happens is we have the egg, animal pole is present and the vegetal pole is present at the bottom. So, cleavage furrows divides in between this animal pole and the vegetal pole. And the next one is vertical plane. Vertical plane. Here what happens is the cleavage furrows passes in the direction from the animal pole towards the vegetal pole, but it should not passes through the median axis. So, consider this is a median axis. Median axis in a sense the center region. So, here what happens is the cleavage furrows passes in the direction from the animal pole towards the vegetal pole, but it should not passes through median axis of the egg. So, this will be the representation for this vertical plane. Example is third cleavage furrow of chick. Example is third cleavage furrow of chick. And the third one is equatorial plane. Here as the name says, the equatorial plane of cleavage bisects the egg at right angle. Bisects the egg at right angle to the median axis. So, let me draw the diagram over here. So, consider this is an egg. Here what happens is animal pole is present, vegetal pole is present at the bottom. So, this is the median axis. Here the equatorial plane comes right angle to the right angle. Right angle to the equatorial plane is right angle to the median axis like this. Okay. Here halfway between the animal pole and the vegetal pole. Halfway between the animal pole and the vegetal pole. Equatorial plane of cleavage bisects the egg at right angle to the median axis. Right angle to the median axis and halfway between the animal pole and the vegetal pole. Example is third cleavage furrow of Amphioxus. Third cleavage furrow of Amphioxus. And the fourth one is last plane. Here this is the latitudinal cleavage or the latitudinal plane or horizontal plane. We can also call it as a transverse plane. Okay. So, here this horizontal plane or the latitudinal plane, it is identical to the equatorial plane. It is identical to the equatorial plane, but it occurs through the cytoplasm on either side of the equatorial plane. So, as I told you before, this latitudinal plane or the horizontal plane is equal or identical to the equatorial plane. So, let me draw the diagram. Consider this is the equatorial plane. Here what happens is on either sides of the equatorial plane, this latitudinal or horizontal plane arises, or it comes on the either side of the equatorial plane. Okay, this is the animal pole and this is the vegetal pole. This is example for the equatorial plane and these two are the example for the latitudinal or horizontal plane. Okay. So, this is about the planes of cleavage.